Well, until a couple of years ago, buying a small car meant that you really had only one choice, and that choice was fuel efficiency as well as affordability. But of late, cars have also become desirable as well as stylish. But which one is the best between these three cars? If you are planning your first car to buy, we'll find out on the show today. Well, I'll talk about the driving experience, the features as well as the space inside these cars to give you that answer. Well, overall cabin quality inside the Alto is pretty consistent, and there are a few hard plastics, but it's quite okay considering the price of this car. Overall quality is definitely better than both the Kwid as well as the RediGo. Well, in terms of practicality, it's a decent place to be. You get a decently sized glove box. There's a small tray where you can of course keep your cell phone, wallet or your spectacles like I have, and there's one big tray where you can keep your big 1 liter bottle from your home. And apart from that, there is also a small cup holder, but the door bins aren't large enough to house anything except maybe your newspaper, and that too folded completely flat. One feature which is much more useful than the ones on those cars is the internally adjustable mirrors over here, because unlike the RediGo as well as the Kwid, where you have to put both the windows down to adjust the mirrors, on this one you can do it without pushing the windows down. Well, in terms of seat comfort, the support for the lower back is very good, but the seat squab isn't very wide or very long, which means that if you are a tall adult like me, someone who is about 5'10 or 5'11 or maybe taller, then you will lack under thigh support, and these seats will tie you on those long highway trips. Well, so hello and welcome to the bright and airy cabin of the Datsun RediGo, and this beige combination as well as these huge windows all across really does give it a sense of space inside this cabin. Well, now the RediGo's cabin won't really win any awards for design, but that said, in terms of practicality, it's a decent place to be in, because you get this huge tray where you can keep your cell phone, your wallet or other odds and ends, and you also get a very small glove box, and you also have a small tray over here where you can keep your sunglasses. But the other good point about the cabin is this AC vent. Now this AC vent is a fixed vent, which means that it's fixed towards the rear of the cabin, so whoever's sitting at the back won't be asking you to adjust the vent to throw air at the back. He will be cooled automatically, and that's a very sensible feature inside this car. Well, the first thing that will really impress you about the Kwid's cabin is this huge touchscreen over here. Now this car is the only one of these three which comes with this, and it has infotainment as well as a Bluetooth connection for your telephone, and also has GPS maps in it, which is really phenomenal considering that the price that this car sells at. The other good point about this car is the practicality that it offers, and there's one huge glove box over here, and there's one below it, and there's also a huge shelf where you can keep your sunglasses or your cell phone or even your wallet, and the door bins are huge as well because they can house those big 1 liter bottles from your home without any problem at all. Well, where the Kwid has the edge over both its main rivals is also in the seat comfort department, and the seat squab is both wide as well as long, unlike the Altos, which is very short, and it's also very comfy because it's well padded, and support for the lower back is excellent as well, and there's a little bit of bolstering for your sides, which means that if you do tend to push it into a corner, the seats will hold really well. So an excellent job by Renault in terms of overall seat comfort as well as features inside the Kwid. Well, so here I'm in the back seat of the Alto, and as you can see, headroom is more than adequate even for someone who is my height, which for reference is 5'10", and there is place below the front seats where I can stretch my feet. That said, it's not a very wide car at the back, which means that only 2 occupants will be comfortable. The third one really will be very close company, and you don't really want to be squished over here at the back in the Alto on long journeys. Well, now in terms of overall plastic quality inside the cabin, well, I'll let you be the judge with the sounds that this car is making. It's not really brilliant, but it is quite acceptable for the price that it sells at. And space in the back is pretty good. As you can see, kneeroom is more than adequate, headroom is massive. So even people who are over 6 feet in height should not have a problem at all. The floorboard is pretty flat, which means that whoever's sitting in the middle should be quite okay for kneeroom. But that said, the seats could offer a little more cushioning. Support for the under thighs could be slightly better, but it is definitely better than the Renault Kwid in terms of overall comfort and space inside the cabin. Well, so here I'm in the back seat of the Kwid, and as you can see, kneeroom is just about adequate considering that I have adjusted the front seats for my driving position, and my height for reference is 5'10". Headroom is more than adequate. But the reason why knee room is limited is because the boot on this car is really huge. In fact, it's the best not only amongst the Alto as well as the Datsun RediGo. It's bigger than even the one on the Hyundai Elite i20. Now this boot officially is 300 liters, which is much more than the 177 on the Alto and the 200 odd liters on the Datsun RediGo, and is also bigger than the Hyundai i20's 285 liter space. So kudos to Renault for giving you one of the biggest boots on any small car on sale in India at the moment. Well, in terms of overall boot space, the Alto comes with a 170 odd liter boot. It's about 177 liters officially. It's a well-shaped boot. It's pretty square in its shape, and there's a very small loading lip as well, which means that you can heave in those big bags from the airport without too many problems. It should not really be a big issue. But yes, it's not as big as the Renault Kwid's 300 liters or even the Datsun RediGo's 200 liter plus. Well, so in terms of boot space, there's no denying that the Renault Kwid is the best car in the entry hatchback space. Remember, that car comes with a boot capacity of 300 liters. But that said, with 230 odd liters to offer, even the Datsun RediGo isn't really that bad. The only issue is that there's a huge loading sill over here. So if you are putting in heavy bags, you will have to put in your back into it. So that can be a bit of an issue. But apart from that, it's par for course considering the size and segment this car is in. Well, so here I am driving the Maruti Alto 800. It's inherently more quiet than both the Renault Kwid as well as the Datsun RediGo. If you are driving these cars back to back, if you are going for a test drive from showroom to showroom, then you will realize that this one is the quietest. It's also the most responsive. It's got a very responsive engine, which makes it a joyous car to drive in the city. It really does dart around quite nicely between light to light. And along with that responsive as well as smooth engine, the gearbox also on the Alto is the best amongst all these three cars. So that really makes this the best driver's car. If you are someone who enjoys driving, then this is the best car to pick amongst all these three. But what you'll also like is the fact that the steering wheel is much more dynamic and a lot more feelsome than both the Kwid as well as the Datsun RediGo. So in that sense, it's a car which does manage to put a smile on your face. Engine is pretty nippy. It really does love to rev. It's pretty smooth. The gearbox is light and pretty crisp. And the clutch also is very linear in its operation, so that makes it a pretty easy car to nip around the traffic when you are in the city. And the ride quality is okay as well, because some of the bumps and potholes do filter in when you are doing slow city speeds, but it's quite okay and quite acceptable for this size of car as well as the price point that it sells at. Well, so here I am driving the Renault Kwid with the 800cc engine, and the first thing you'll notice is that the Kwid isn't really as silent or quiet as, say, maybe the Maruti Suzuki Alto is, and even the Datsun RediGo is slightly better in terms of overall refinement, surprisingly, because it's the same engine which both these cars use. But that said, the responsiveness is quite okay. The engine does suffer from a little bit of jerkiness if you don't rev it hard, because Renault have tuned this engine for overall fuel efficiency, so drivability does take a slight hit because the ECU has been mapped for efficiency, and there's a little bit of jerkiness, but that's quite okay, because if you do rev it, that jerkiness does disappear. Now the good thing about the Kwid is that its steering wheel is really light. The clutch is also pretty light, but the gearbox is not in the same league as the Altos. It's a pretty clunky gearbox to use and does not have the same crisp feeling about itself like the Alto's gearbox displays. So that's something that maybe Renault can work on. But that said, because you sit a lot higher than you do inside the Alto, you get a better view of the road ahead, and the seats definitely are much better than the ones on the Alto, which makes this car a better car for those long highway trips. Well, once the Kwid is on the move, refinement does improve quite dramatically, and this car is pretty stable on the highway. If you are doing speeds of say about 80 or 90 kph, this car does feel pretty stable. Well, in terms of overall fuel efficiency, the Renault Kwid is ahead of both the Maruti Alto 800 as well as the Datsun RediGo. This car delivers a claimed fuel efficiency figure in excess of 25 kpl, which makes this not only the best car of these three today, but also makes it one of the best cars across segments in India at the moment. Well, so here I'm driving the Datsun RediGo. Now remember, this car comes with an 800cc engine, and it's the same motor which also does duty on the Renault Kwid. But surprisingly, the Datsun RediGo is better to drive than the Kwid. And why do I say that? Well, because it does not have the same jerkiness that the Kwid's engine displays, and it also feels a little more refined and a little more smoother than the engine on the Kwid. So Datsun seems to have worked hard on that engine and done a good job with it. Well, what you will enjoy on this car is the fact that it feels pretty responsive even from the lower end of its rev range, and because it is pretty light, it's a very light car, it does accelerate quite nicely. And the other good point is that the steering wheel is the best of the lot. It's the best steering wheel compared to the Maruti Suzuki Alto as well as the Renault Kwid in terms of its lightness. You can actually use your small finger to simply turn the steering wheel around. Now, it's of course something that we will not suggest, but it's something that you can actually do. So this is the best car in the entry hatchback space if you live in an area where parking is very difficult and there are very few parking slots, because this one will be very easy to park into a tight space. Well, in terms of driving dynamics, the Datsun RediGo is slightly behind the Maruti Suzuki Alto because the gearbox isn't as crisp, and even the clutch isn't as linear to operate as the one on the Alto. The braking on this car is slightly behind the Kwid but at par with the Alto, so that's quite acceptable. And even though I'm nitpicking at the moment, do remember that this car's base price is very low. It retails at a price of less than 2,40,000 in Delhi for the base version. Well, so there's the Maruti Suzuki Alto, which offers you the best engine in terms of refinement as well as responsiveness, and that along with its light controls makes it a very good car around the city. Well, but that said, it is the Datsun RediGo which offers you the biggest cabin and also has masses of headroom, which means that tallest passengers will be the best suited in this car over those long journeys. But it is the Renault Kwid which comes across as the best all-rounder of this lot. It looks stylish on the outside, has a nice cabin with a long list of features, and also has the biggest boot of this lot. And all that means that if you're in the market for your first ever small car, then the Kwid really is the best choice out of all these three.